The sharp crack of glass against wood shattered the quiet. Richard slammed the rim of a crystal goblet on the breakfast table, his voice booming like a judge pronouncing a sentence. "Sign it, Madison." Now I stared at the papers spread before me. They weren't just papers. They were eviction orders. My removal from the mansion I had built with my sweat, my youth, and my father's legacy. My hand shook around the pen. For years I had worked double hospital shifts, saving every cent, sacrificing sleep and dreams so my family could have this home. And here I was, treated as if I were an intruder in my own house. At the counter lounged Brooke, draped in crimson silk like a queen in stolen robes. She curled her lips into a smirk and played with her hair. "Why drag this out, sweetheart? You'll be free of all this stress. Let us handle the house, US." The word was venom. I wasn't some fragile widow past her prime. I was 38, still radiant, still strong, but worn thin by sacrifice. I had given up graduate school to raise my daughter Claire, while Richard stumbled through one failed business after another. Every stone of this estate was mine. The mortgage payments covered by my overtime checks, the renovations funded by my father's inheritance, the late nights I spent balancing bills while Richard slept soundly. And yet, Richard glared across the table, his jaw tight, his 40-year-old face radiating smug control. "You're nothing without me, Madison. This house stands because of my name." From the doorway came a small, broken voice. "Dad, what's going on?" Claire stood there, 16 years old, still in her school hoodie. Her backpack slipped from her shoulder as she looked at us. Her mother cornered, her father cruel. Another woman draped in victory that wasn't hers. Richard shot her a glare. "Go to your room, Claire. This is between adults." But my daughter didn't move. She stood frozen, tears pooling, forced to watch me silenced. Brooke's laugh split the tension. "Don't worry, Claire. When your mom finds a little apartment, maybe you can visit her on weekends." The words cut deeper than a knife. The clock ticked, each second louder than the last. I lowered the pen, pressing it against the paper. Richard's smirk widened. Brooke leaned closer, ready to see me surrender. But I stopped mid-stroke. Slowly, I slid the papers back across the table. "No." Richard's fist crashed down, rattling the dishes. Claire flinched. "You don't get to say no. This house is mine. You're just a guest who overstayed her welcome." I looked him straight in the eye. My voice was steady, calm. "I built this house, Richard. I paid every bill. Mock me if you want, but you'll never erase the truth." From the doorway, Claire's voice broke through her tears. "Mom, don't sign. Please." Richard sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Truth? The only truth is what's on these papers, and everyone will believe me." But he didn't know what I carried. Inside my purse was a brass key, the key to a downtown safe deposit box. Inside that box were the originals, the deed in my name, the bank records proving my payments, the notarized letter from my late father. Evidence strong enough to rip his lies apart. I kept quiet. I endured the humiliation because I understood something Richard never would. My silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. The morning ended with Richard storming upstairs, Brooke trailing behind him like a triumphant shadow. Their laughter echoed down the hallway. Claire rushed to me, throwing her arms around my waist. "Mom," she whispered, "don't let him take everything." I held her tight, my eyes burning. "I won't, sweetheart. Not everything." As my hand brushed against the brass key in my purse, I made myself a promise. Richard believed he had already won. Brooke believed she had replaced me, but neither of them had any idea what I carried. One day soon, the house, the truth, and my dignity would return to me. If you were me, cornered by the man you sacrificed everything for, would you have signed just to stop the pain? Or would you have waited, like I did, for the moment the tables could finally turn? In the days after that breakfast showdown, I felt myself erased from the mansion I had built. Richard strutted down the marble hallways, jingling the BMW keys I had bought. Brooke's heels clicked against the floorboards, her laughter echoing as she claimed each room like a conqueror staking territory. Everywhere I turned, another piece of my sacrifice had been removed. The rocking chair my father carved, pushed into storage. Family photos vanished from the hallway. The medical textbooks I'd bought while juggling shifts at the hospital, gone without a trace. One evening, Richard hosted a dinner party. He poured my Bordeaux into crystal glasses, raising a toast in front of friends. "To new beginnings," he declared, his smirk cutting like glass. "Finally free of dead weight." The table went silent, then erupted in uneasy chuckles. Brooke leaned into him, her ruby dress glittering under the chandelier. "Madison should be grateful," Brooke purred. I heard my own name used like a weapon against me. The jab landed sharp. My daughter, Claire, sat in the corner, eyes wide with tears. I wanted to scream, but instead, I squeezed Claire's hand beneath the table. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The next morning, I opened my email to find a $2,500 retainer charge. Richard had used our joint account to hire Alan Becker, his so-called lawyer. I stormed into the kitchen, paper clenched in my fist. "You used my money to pay someone to throw me out?" Richard didn't flinch. He adjusted his cufflinks, his voice dripping with disdain. "Correction? Our money. Which means my money. The house, the cars, even the air you breathe here. It's all mine." The words sliced into me, but I stayed steady. I printed a copy of the transaction later that day. Every insult, every theft, I was turning into evidence. That afternoon, Claire and I came home from school pickup to find Brooke twirling in the living room mirror, draped in my crimson evening gown. "Does it suit me?" Brooke smirked, spinning slowly, the fabric clinging to her curves. Richard applauded. "Everything in this house suits her. Soon it'll all be ours, legally." Claire's backpack hit the floor with a thud. "Stop it. That's my mom's dress. How can you—" "Enough," Richard roared, pointing toward the stairs. "Go to your room." But I stepped in, pulling Claire close to my side. My voice was calm, but steel-lined every syllable. "She's not the one who should leave this room, Richard." Soon, even the staff stopped looking me in the eye. They took orders from Brooke, not me. Invitations from neighbors mysteriously stopped arriving. Intercepted, I suspected, before they ever reached my hands. The house that once echoed with laughter now carried the suffocating hush of exile. Yet in the quiet, Claire's small notes appeared, scribbled post-its tucked under my teacup. "Don't give up, Mom." Those scraps of encouragement were lifelines, reminding me that my daughter's eyes were always watching. Late one night, I paused outside Richard's office door. His voice carried through the crack, bitter and cruel. "She's pathetic, Mark. Just a tired nurse who got lucky with inheritance. Once she's gone, I can finally breathe." Pathetic. The word burned hotter than fire. I pressed my palm to the wall, my chest aching. I was only 38, still strong, still resilient. And yet, in his eyes, I was already discarded. Tears came, but behind them flickered something fiercer. Resolve. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, my fingers tracing the worn brass key hidden in my purse. I remembered what Linda Morrison once told me years earlier. Keep the documents safe, Madison. Men like Richard bluff with arrogance, but when the time comes, facts will cut sharper than words. Inside that safe deposit box lay the arsenal Richard didn't know existed: bank statements, inheritance letters, the original deed with my name alone. I whispered into the dark, "Not yet. But when the moment comes, this ends." Near midnight, my phone buzzed. A notification flashed: Carter Estate, live video. I clicked. Richard's slurred voice filled the screen as he live-streamed a tour of his mansion. He bragged about the wine cellar, the pool, the bedrooms. Brooke draped on his arm, laughing into the camera. Viewers commented in real time, their words popping across the feed. "What a place." "Lucky man." I didn't cry. I pressed record screen, my hands steady. Every arrogant word, every smirk, every lie. Captured and saved. The house was silent as the live stream ended. I placed the phone down, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. My face was tired but unbroken. Richard thought he was erasing me. Brooke thought she had already won. But with each humiliation, I was stacking evidence, preparing my strike. And when the time came, I wouldn't just take back my home. I would take back my dignity, my voice, my life. If you were me, watching the man you sacrificed for flaunt your house with another woman, would you explode in rage? Or would you, like I did, collect every shard of proof and wait for the perfect moment to turn the tables? My husband had tried to humiliate me in front of the world, live streaming through the mansion he swore was his. But the morning after, when I looked in the mirror, I realized something. I was not broken. I was sharpened. 38 years old, yes. But the lines on my face were carved by sacrifice, not defeat. I slipped my hand into my purse. The brass key pressed into my palm like a secret oath. Today wouldn't be about survival. Today would be about preparation. By noon, I walked beneath the marble columns of Whitaker Bank. The lobby smelled faintly of polished stone and ink. The security guard studied my ID while the key glinted under the harsh lights. Down in the chilled vault, rows of metal doors stretched out like silent witnesses. I slid mine open and lifted the folder Linda and I had prepared years ago. Inside lay the arsenal Richard never imagined I had. Mortgage statements signed only by me. The deed, carrying my name and mine alone. Bank records. Every cent of my inheritance funneled into this home, and my father's notarized letter declaring the estate would remain in my hands. My fingers trembled as I touched his signature, not from fear, but from the weight of truth. That afternoon, I spread the folder across Linda Morrison's desk. Her navy suit was crisp, her expression harder than steel. She closed the file with a snap. "You've had the ace card all along." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I wanted to believe he wouldn't sink this low. "Then let him sink," she said. "Every boast, every forged paper, every live stream, he's tying his own noose. When we reveal the truth, Madison, he won't just lose the house. He'll lose the dignity he tried to strip from you." Her hand pressed firmly over mine. "Don't fear if he pushes harder. Let him, because we'll make sure the fall is public." A chill ran through me. Not dread, resolve. The oak table glowed under the chandelier, but the food was tasteless ash in my mouth. Brooke sparkled in my stolen pearls, laughing too loud at his jokes. Richard raised his glass. "To us, the rightful owners of the Carter estate. Finally secured." Polite applause followed. Some guests glanced at me with thin sympathy. I rose slowly, heels tapping against the wood. From my purse, I placed a velvet box in the center of the table. Richard opened it. The room froze. Inside lay the original deed. "What is this?" he snapped. "Just a reminder," I said, my voice calm but unyielding, "that not everything you claim belongs to you." I snapped the box shut and slipped it away. Whispers rippled across the table. Richard's smile cracked. Brooke's laugh faltered. Cliffhanger beat. I didn't reveal everything. Not yet. Sometimes silence cuts deeper than a strike. Later, Brooke cornered me in the hallway. Her perfume was thick, her smile sharp as a blade. "You think flashing a piece of paper will stop him?" I met her stare without flinching. "I don't need to stop him. His lies will." For the first time, her smirk slipped. Richard's arrogance ballooned. He livestreamed again, bragging about my wine cellar, my mansion, my future with Brooke. Every word was captured and archived by Linda's paralegal, Natalie. Even neighbors were beginning to see. From my kitchen window, I overheard Mrs. Whitaker telling Megan Foster, "Madison's stronger than she looks." Richard's day is coming. Pity was fading. Solidarity was forming. The tide was shifting. One night I found Claire hunched over her textbooks, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Mom, are we going to lose everything?" I sat beside her, brushing her hair back. "No, sweetheart. We're not losing. We're waiting. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait for the right moment to speak." She leaned into me. "I just don't want him to win." I kissed her forehead. "Neither do I. And he won't." Friday afternoon, the storm broke. Richard barged into my room, face flushed, papers clenched in his fist. "Enough games. Tomorrow we meet Alan. You'll sign everything." In front of witnesses, Brooke appeared in the doorway, her laugh slicing the air. "Better practice your signature, Madison. It's your last chance to make it mean something." I looked Richard dead in the eye. My voice was calm, even serene. "Of course." His smirk returned. Brooke's grin widened. They thought I was finished. But when the door slammed behind them, I reached for my purse. My fingers wrapped around the brass key, steady as a heartbeat. Beside it lay Linda's folder, my arsenal of truth. Tomorrow wouldn't be the end. It would be the beginning. If you were me, ordered to sign away your life, would you have given in for peace? Or would you, like I did, walk into that room knowing the truth was already yours? The air inside Alan Becker's law office felt thick, like a storm holding its breath. The smell of stale coffee clung to the carpet. Low murmurs hummed in the corners, every voice lowered as if even strangers sensed what was about to erupt. Richard strutted in first, chest puffed like a conquering king. Brooke was draped on his arm, shimmering in silk, and the pearls that had once been mine. She smiled like a queen entering her coronation. Behind them, Alan adjusted his tie, his briefcase packed with lies he thought would bury me. I entered last. My navy dress skimmed the floor, my heels tapped a steady rhythm on the tile. My purse swung lightly at my side, heavy with the brass key and the folder Richard never believed existed. To him, my calm must have looked like surrender. He slammed a stack of papers onto the table. "Sign, Madison." Today this ends. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I turned my eyes on Alan. "Before I sign, Mr. Becker, perhaps you can confirm, whose name is on the deed?" Alan fumbled through Richard's forged documents. His throat worked. It lists Richard Hayes." A voice cut through the air like a blade. "That deed is a forgery." Every head turned. Linda Morrison stepped forward, her folder snapping open as she laid certified records across the polished wood. The weight of those papers hit like a hammer. Richard's smirk cracked. Brooke blinked. "These," Linda said, her tone sharp as glass, "are the official documents. Every mortgage, every inheritance record, every deed. all in Madison Carter's name. Forcing her signature is fraud. Profiting from her estate is theft. Richard's face drained of color. That's ridiculous. Linda cut him off. We also have video evidence. Your live streams. Your boasts. You walked through her home on camera, claiming it as yours. Screenshots archived. Timestamps verified. You documented your own fraud. Alan spun toward him, fury darkening his face. You didn't tell me she had this. You've dragged me into your mess. Do you realize what you've done? Brooke's hand slipped from Richard's arm. Her voice was a hiss, low and venomous. You swore she had nothing. The room thickened. I could almost hear the walls closing in. The door opened again, breaking the silence. David Sullivan, the accountant I had quietly hired, entered carrying a leather briefcase. He moved with the precision of a man who knew his numbers couldn't be argued. Our audit is complete, he announced, laying down a neat stack of papers. In 4 years, Mr. Hayes contributed $0 to the estate. Meanwhile, over $300,000 of Madison Carter's earnings and inheritance funded every mortgage payment and renovation. He spread out receipts, bank statements, wire transfers. My name glowed from every page. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His empire of arrogance was collapsing, brick by brick, in front of the very people he sought to impress. For weeks, I had been silenced, humiliated, erased, but not anymore. I rose slowly, the scrape of my chair loud in the silence, my voice cut steady, sharp enough to break stone. You called me pathetic. You said I was useless. But look at the truth, Richard. Every brick of that house, every dollar in those accounts, it was mine. My father's legacy, my sacrifice, and you tried to steal it all because you mistook my silence for weakness. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him, each word deliberate. This estate is not your trophy. It is my home, and you are trespassing. The words cracked through the air like a judge's gavel. Brooke's mask shattered. With a sharp tug, she ripped the pearls from her throat and hurled them onto the table. I'm not sinking with this ship, she spat. Find another fool to scam. Her heels clattered against the marble as she stormed out. The door slammed shut, leaving Richard alone in the wreckage of his lies. Linda slid one last document across the table. A restraining order, she said, filed yesterday. Effective immediately, Richard Hayes is barred from residing in, profiting from, or even entering the Carter estate. Law enforcement has already been notified. The door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, their presence filling every inch of space. One handed Richard a clipboard. Mr. Hayes, you have 48 hours to vacate the property. Non-compliance will result in removal. His shoulders sagged. The smirk he had worn like armor crumbled into hollow defeat. At the back of the room, Mrs. Whitaker and Megan Foster, my neighbors who had seen too much for too long, exchanged satisfied looks. Their whispers carried like a soft anthem. She did it. She really did it. For months, I had been the woman they pitied. In that moment, I became the woman who endured and prevailed. I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around the brass key, the same key Richard once mocked as worthless. I set it on the table beside the deed and the discarded pearls. This was never about marble floors or luxury cars, I said softly, my voice carrying in the silence. It was about dignity. You tried to strip it from me. And today, in front of your lawyer, your mistress, and your neighbors, you lost everything you tried to steal. My voice did not shake. It rang with finality. Richard sank into his chair, muttering, broken under the weight of his own arrogance. Alan scrambled to gather his papers, desperate to distance himself from the wreckage. Linda touched my shoulder gently. It's over. I lifted my eyes to the blinds where sunlight streamed through. No, it's just beginning. Because from this moment on, I live on my own terms. I turned, heels striking against the floor like a drumbeat of victory. When I pushed open the door, sunlight spilled across my face. The city roared alive outside, people moving in their own worlds, unaware that mine had just shifted forever. Behind me, the sound of Richard's downfall lingered like thunder after a storm, an echo of justice, finally delivered. If you were me, standing in that room while your betrayer lost everything, what would you have said? Would you have shouted in triumph? Or, like I did, let the truth speak louder than rage? 2 days later, I stood on the porch of the Carter estate and watched as Richard's world was packed into cardboard boxes. His flashy suits, the whiskey bottles he used to wave around like trophies, the golf clubs he never touched. Everything was stacked on the driveway under the hard glare of the afternoon sun. Uniformed officers kept watch, their presence heavy and undeniable. The neighbors had gathered, quiet but curious, watching the man who once boasted that this was his mansion, shuffled out like a tenant evicted for unpaid rent. I folded my arms across my chest. For years I had shrunk in his shadow, lowered my head to survive the ridicule, swallowed my words to keep the peace. But not anymore. That afternoon I stood tall, my back straight, my chin lifted. Richard didn't dare meet my eyes as he climbed into his beat-up sedan. The arrogance that once fueled him was gone. For the first time, the house was silent, not because he had erased me, but because he was gone. Inside, I walked slowly from room to room, letting my fingers brush across familiar surfaces that finally felt like mine again. The dining table where he had mocked me gleamed beneath soft light. I ran my hand across the polished oak, remembering the sting of humiliation at dinners where he declared himself the rightful owner. Now, the table belonged to me again. In the living room, the air no longer reeked of Brooke's perfume. Instead, the soft scent of lavender candles floated in the space. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of intrusion lift from my chest. Upstairs, I paused in front of the mirror, where Brooke had once flaunted her crimson gown like a queen staking claim over stolen territory. I lifted the gown from the closet and draped it across my shoulders. The silk flowed down my frame, cold and heavy, but no longer a weapon meant to diminish me. Against my skin, it felt like armor reclaimed. From my dresser, I pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside lay the pearl necklace that had hung on Brooke's throat for weeks, a stolen prize meant to humiliate me. I clasped it around my neck. Against my skin, the pearls shimmered, not as a trophy of betrayal, but as a badge of survival. I looked into the mirror and whispered, "These were never yours to take. Not the pearls, not the house, not me." That evening, Claire rushed through the front door, her backpack thudding to the floor. She froze in the kitchen doorway. For a split second, I saw her bracing herself, waiting for Richard's bark, for Brooke's laugh. But the house was peaceful. Her voice trembled. "Is he really gone?" I smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. And we're still here." She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. I held her tight, rocking her gently, whispering into her hair, "You'll never have to watch me bow my head again." Her tears dampened my blouse, but I let them fall. They weren't tears of despair anymore. They were the release of fear we had both carried too long. Late that night, I stepped into the garden. The roses I had planted years ago glowed pale under the silver wash of moonlight. I traced my hand along a petal, marveling at its softness, its resilience. Every overtime shift, every bill paid, every tear shed in silence. It all lived in these walls, in this soil. For years, I had thought silence meant weakness, that holding my tongue while Richard ridiculed me meant I had no fight left. But now I understood. My silence had been strategy. It had been my shield until the moment came to strike back with proof. I looked up at the stars, my chest rising with a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I whispered to my late father, "Your legacy is safe." I kept the house. I kept myself. Chosesef. If you've ever been silenced, if you've ever been told you were worthless, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, then you know what I felt. Richard called me pathetic. He erased me. He humiliated me in front of neighbors, friends, even my own daughter. But he didn't understand that endurance is not the same as defeat. I endured. I waited. And when the moment came, I let the truth destroy his lies. Dignity is not something handed to you because you carry someone else's last name. Dignity is carved by sacrifice, protected by courage, and reclaimed by strength. Respect isn't given because of blood or marriage. It is earned through love, through kindness. And if someone refuses to see that, their blindness does not erase your worth. I didn't win by screaming louder than him. I didn't win by begging for his mercy. I won by standing tall, by letting the evidence speak, by refusing to let betrayal define me. Richard lost not because I destroyed him, but because his greed and arrogance destroyed him. That's the justice life delivers, the justice of consequences. So I ask you, if you were in my shoes, cornered in your own home, your name threatened, your sacrifices erased, what would you have done? Would you have exploded in rage? Or would you have waited, as I did, for the moment when the truth would echo louder than humiliation? Share your story in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal? An inheritance dispute? A partner or family member who tried to erase your worth? Your words could be the strength another woman needs tonight. And remember, here at Her Betrayal Stories, no one stands alone. Every story we tell is proof that sacrifice matters, that betrayal can be overturned, and that tables can and will turn. If my story touched you, write a promise to yourself in the comments. Never let anyone erase my dignity. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story of sacrifice, betrayal, and justice reclaimed. The sun dipped low as I stepped back onto the porch. I turned the key in the lock, not in fear, but in peace. The pearls glowed warm against my collarbone, the crimson gown brushed softly against my ankles, and Claire's laughter drifted down the hall like music. For the first time in years, I walked tall, not as a victim, not as a wife erased, but as a woman who reclaimed everything she was told she had lost. My story isn't just one of survival, it is one of triumph.